Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
What's up, everybody? Rachel is not here once again. We hope vacation is going well. Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro. Jake, you brought a mug today. Well done.
Yeah, I actually remembered right before the show to give myself a little hot cup of tea. It felt suiting given our weather out here. We got the Lumineers represented. I also got the Lumineers coaster. So we're all Lumineered out.
Oh, shout out. That's like, hey, ho, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho. Yeah?
Yeah. So
yeah,
Colorado, and I've got a cool story about them. I've got a couple cool stories. So one, our friend Vic Vela, who covered the finals for Colorado Public Radio, and he has a national public radio podcast, Back from Broken. He premiered his podcast one season at Clock Tower Cabaret, and the Lumineers were his special guests. So I'm down there with like 60 people, and I saw the Lumineers do an interview with my guy Vic, and then they played a couple songs too. So I was like in a room with 60 people at the height of their popularity, like listening to them. And then this whole setup here with the tea, I was backstage at one of their shows and I had like a VIP experience. But my story in all of this is Ho Hey, which is a very popular song. If you guys know the bar Meadowlark on Larimer and like 27th, that's where they recorded the stomps. They loved the stomps so much from the stage at Meadowlark. So that's where they recorded the stomps for Ho Hey. So there you go. Fun trivia.
Well, behind the scenes, I love to hear it, love to see it. Happy Friday to you, Giovanni. Happy Friday, Paul. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Even without Rachel here, rolling with us, we appreciate it. Yes, Broncos country for life. What's up, Troy? Vacation mode starts in 3 hours. Tick, tick, tick. It will not be vacation for Jake and I, though, because the NBA and the NHL decided to do their most important stuff of the offseason this afternoon and tomorrow. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to start with, you see it on the left side, guys, Bruce. I feel like Marcia from the Brady Bunch, Jake, because, oh my, did you expect the Bruce Brown recruitment tour to turn into like the summer of LeBron? Good for Bruce. He's going to get the bag. But for being a six-man, this is the most sought-after six-man free agent I can remember. That's what winning a championship will do for you.
Yeah, if he's going to Indianapolis, he's going to start for the Pacers. If he goes to Houston, he's going to start. If he goes to the Lakers, he's the third best player on that team. So how many teams is he the sixth man for?
There's a sixth man for the Nuggets. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking about going into free agency. A six man has not had this much hype in the history of the NBA.
Well, and that's part of it. Everyone sees that role that he could do and project him to such a higher role. The thing with this that's interesting is last offseason, I didn't even put Bruce Brown on my 5 targeted free agents for the Nuggets because I thought he would be too expensive. I loved Bruce Brown coming out of Brooklyn because of his ability to cut and finish, because of his ability to defend, his ability to play make. I'm like, this is a guy who should be making $15 to $20 million a year. So, I mean, I texted us in the thread, and you can go back and read my column the day Bruce signed. I'm like, this is an absolute home run for the Nuggets. And then we find out later, Bruce is like, yeah, no one really wanted me. Now everyone in the league, everyone in the league's recognizing those skills. And it's like, if you're showing those skills while playing next to Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, who are all famously selfish players, and then you see it against Nikola Jokic, who's a famous unselfish player, you can kind of find out what Bruce can do in any situation. So for a bunch of teams, they're like, okay, we know what we're going to get with this guy. And it makes sense to me that he would be one of the most coveted free agents in this class. You look at the class, it's super weak. There's some weird stuff going on with the changes in the collective bargaining agreement that make it so some teams have a very short window to acquire people. So yeah, it's just kind of a meeting of a bunch of circumstance that's making Bruce such a coveted free agent. And he has the potential to maybe get paid a lot more than what the Lakers could even offer. And they're sniffing around too.
All right, so let's fill everyone in on the news of the morning, because not everyone lives in the Twitter world like some of us, pointing the finger at me, pointing the finger at you. We now know of 4 meetings for Bruce Brown. This was reported by Ian Bagley, a reporter who covers the Knicks. New York, Indiana, Houston, and Dallas. Plus, you mentioned the Lakers are still looming. There was a report yesterday that sort of momentum was building towards Bruce to the Lakers. And then Tim McMahon of ESPN says, but hold on, Bruce isn't ruling Denver out. And then he went on someone's podcast or something and said that Michael Malone and Jamal Murray are putting the full court press on Bruce to come back to Denver. Jake, that's at least 6 teams. There's always a mystery team in all this. I mean, you're talking about a quarter of the league wants Bruce Brown when it's all said and done. Where do you think he lands? And do you think we'll know at 4:01 today? Or do you believe he's going to take 4 meetings and this thing is going to drag into Saturday, into Sunday, a la, I made the joke at the start of the show, but the summer of LeBron when he goes to meeting after meeting after meeting?
Well, the worst is when Durant announced on the 4th of July in The Athletic that he was joining the Warriors. That dragged out. I've got Bruce signing midday tomorrow. I think that's when it's going to happen, especially with these meetings. And he's deserved a chance to kind of have his pick of the litter. I think the move that indicates to me which team is really serious about Bruce is the Chris Duarte trade this morning. Indiana traded a young shooting guard. I think he was in his 2nd or his 3rd year out of Oregon. I've liked Duarte for a long time. I've actually had him as a Nuggets target a couple different times, as a trade target and a draft target when he came out. So I think that they're seeing Bruce as a perfect guy to play off of Tyrese Halliburton. And Tyrese Halliburton obviously is a guard. Nikola Jokic is a center. But both of them have similar levels of playmaking. So I think the Pacers can kind of project and say, hey, Bruce can do some of this stuff that Halliburton doesn't always do with the ball. All the while they have this big rim protector in Miles Turner. And they can kind of build this funky team and catch up to, 7, 8, 9 in the East and find a way into the play-in, because that team is building.
Okay, but hold on. He's going to go from a championship to chasing a 9 seed in the East just because they traded Chris Duarte? I don't know who Chris Duarte is.
Well, they're going to be able to offer him $20 to $22 million, whereas the Nuggets are going to be able to offer him $7 million.
Okay. So this would be a total bag play. Which, again, no one's blaming him if he goes and gets the bag. But when you're talking to me about, hey, he can chase a 9 seed with Miles Turner, I'm sort of sitting here thinking, that sounds fun. Or he could come have another parade in Denver. But the money.
Well,
okay.
And the thing that's different with the Jeremy Grant situation is when he left for Detroit, they had like 4 bigs on the roster, and Mason Plumlee also went along with him. So that team didn't make sense. The Pacers are growing. They're young. They make sense. They're a basketball team. Halliburton's a budding star. So you can see the future there. I think that ultimately what Bruce Brown's going to get a guaranteed bag versus, betting on himself for a year and then getting that payday from the Nuggets. But I think ultimately in the long run, if he stayed with Denver, he would end up making more money in his career because of he has proven to be so much of a better player when he's on the floor with Nikola Jokic. He is much made by Nikola Jokic as he is great. He's a really good player. Again, I loved him coming out of Brooklyn, but he is a different level of guy with Nikola Jokic. And that's part of the reason why now I'm sitting here going, yeah, Bruce Brown would be a big loss, but I think the Nuggets would be able to replace him, maybe not to the level of his talent, but find a way to create him in the aggregate.
Yeah, but there's always the chemistry factor. You never know how the new guy's going to fit in coming off a championship. And that's what makes it so tempting to run it back with those 7. Obviously, 6 of the 7 are coming back. Jeff Green could still come back. We don't know. Even guys like DeAndre and Ish, Calvin Booth on the record saying he wants to run it back with everyone. They'd obviously re-sign knowing that they're just taking up roster spots, being locker room guys and not playing guys. I've asked you this earlier in the week. I'm going to ask you this now as free agency starts in less than 6 hours, Jake. For those that don't know, 4:00 today is when tampering begins, which means you're going to hear about deals starting at 4:01. Got to give us a percentage, man. Bruce Brown in a Nuggets uniform next year at this moment in time, 10:39 on Friday, June 30th.
20% chance Bruce Brown re-signs this summer to stay with the Denver Nuggets. I wouldn't be completely stunned. I wouldn't be completely shocked. I think it's a chance, but I think it's a low percentage chance. I think the betting favorites right now, as of this morning, is Indiana. And then I would put a team like Dallas slightly ahead as well. I put the Nuggets as probably the third favorite. I think they're slightly above the Lakers. I don't think Bruce is going to leave for the Lakers. I think the Lakers are just trying to negotiate some stuff. But I'll give you this scenario. Let's say Bruce's agent leaks that he's interested in the Lakers, and then he holds on, and the Lakers are waiting on Bruce, and he doesn't sign there, and he comes back to the Nuggets, essentially messing with the entire Lakers offseason. He would just double down on his absolute. It would be the best. It would be the best.
Yeah, anything to mess with the Lakers is a good idea. It would be so funny. You mentioned it there. If like the Lakers truly think because they're the Lakers, oh, Bruce is going to take all these meetings, but we're still going to get him. And then in the meantime, all the good free agents get snatched up, and it's LeBron, AD, and gosh, who knows? Rounding out the Lakers rotation next year. That couldn't happen to a nicer team. Couldn't happen to a nicer fan base.
You know what I really want to happen at 401? Us to get the Adrian Wojnarowski bomb that says DeAndre Jordan has re-signed in Denver for a 1-year deal. Because it was so annoying last year that was the first deal of free agency and that the Nuggets were signing a third string center. But if they do it again after a championship, the vibes are great.
And I keep harping on it, man. But DeAndre gave us 3 good minutes in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. He deserves
minutes.
He did. I mean, in all seriousness, Bam got the N1 on Jeff, and then Bam got the N1 on Jeff. And it was just like, oh my gosh, Aaron can't play, Nikola can't play. You got to get DeAndre in the game. And to Michael Malone's credit, he recognized it. And DeAndre came in. He got the block. He got a couple stops on Bam. He stabilized that. Jake, they could have been down 10-12 after that first quarter, and they're down like 5. So it's mostly joking, but he played 3 good minutes in a closeout game of the NBA Finals. He did.
He did. And you know what the funny thing is? He was pretty good in the Minnesota series too, except for the 30 seconds where he was like a -7. But besides those 30 seconds, he was pretty good, and the Nuggets needed him. He was good, a break glass in case of emergency, foul trouble guy. And obviously he was great in the locker room behind the scenes as well. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if both DeAndre and Jeff are back. I don't think either are taking significant deals to be here in Denver, but I could see both guys wanting to wrap it up here in Denver and be part of this chance to repeat.
Okay, but DeAndre would know his role. Do you worry about Jeff coming back with the expectation to play, and he gets transitioned into a DeAndre-ish role of, dude, you're just on the team to be a locker room guy. You're no longer a get minutes guy. Because I think we saw flashes in the playoffs where it looked like, okay, Jeff Green's reached the end of the road in terms of a rotation guy. That doesn't mean he can't be on a roster. People understand there's 2 different things in the NBA, a roster guy and a rotation guy. But how would Jeff adapt going from rotation to roster? I guess that, as I hit my computer, I guess that worries me a little bit.
So Jeff has publicly stated he wants to finish his career in Denver. And Jeff is a really smart guy. So he knows the Nuggets' money situation. He knows which rookies are coming and stuff. And he knows that midway through last season, he was replaced in the rotation by Vlatko Čančar and Zeke Naji. And the only reason Jeff got back was because Zeke and Vlatko both got hurt. And then Malone didn't want to make a change 10 games before the postseason to change the rotation going into the playoffs. So I think if Jeff re-signed, he would know that he is kind of he's the first guy out of the rotation, and he's going to be in the rotation a lot of the times, depending on who is out there. And I think he would be okay with that role. He knows where he's at in his career. There's only 2 guys left from his draft class in the NBA. It's him and Kevin Durant. So I'm not thinking that like Jeff's going to go get a bag and he thinks he's going to go get a bag. If Jeff can go get the full mid-level exception for $5 million or $7 million, good on him. The Nuggets realistically are going to be able to offer him a minimum, which actually pays him in cash more than what it is on the salary cap because he's aged so many years. He's like reached a certain loophole in the collective bargaining agreement, essentially. So the Nuggets could give him like this $1.5 million cap space deal, but it'll only count. It gives him like $3.5 million in cash, which is only a $1.5 million pay decrease from last year for him. So if he wants to lay down roots in Denver, which he's talked about, and he's got a bunch of young girls, and he wants to be part of this championship core and have a chance to repeat and finish his career on this high note, that's a good deal to make. We're not talking about Bruce where, Bruce has only made a handful of $1 million in his career, and the difference in guaranteed money is 7 million versus, 50. Jeff has made millions and millions of dollars in his career, and the difference is literally $1.5 million and a chance to win a championship, and he seems comfortable. So at what point do you say, I'm comfortable, I like my family here, and let's just run it back? So that's why I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff came back, and that's why I put him as, in my offseason preview on denversports.com, as a guy I expected to come back even though he was an unrestricted free agent.
All right, some good info there. I'm with you. If he wants to be here and he's willing to accept his role, then Uncle Jeff, come on back. All right, but Jake, let's move on to chaos, because chaos is coming around the NBA this afternoon. We started to see it yesterday with the news that James Harden is going to be a sign and trade guy from Philadelphia. We saw the Knicks, but then we saw the Clippers. So I want your thoughts on that. Like, just another team chasing the Nuggets, Beal to the Suns, Chris Paul to the Warriors, perhaps James Harden to the Clippers. Do any of these teams scare you? And then what's it going to be like? Give fans a preview of 4 o'clock this afternoon and sort of the madhouse that is NBA free agency. Because I know we have a lot of folks watching who are big NBA fans, but got even more into the NBA because of the Nuggets title run. So it may be the most plugged in they've been to NBA free agency maybe ever.
So because there's a new collective bargaining agreement that goes into place in 13 hours, the trade financial rules change. Currently, right now, if you send out a $30 million contract, you can only get back 125% of that salary if both teams are over the cap. That number changes to 110% of the salary. What you need to know about that is essentially for these big name trades and these big star trades, they get a lot harder to make in 13 hours. So James Harden essentially has 13 hours to be traded to the Clippers. This is going to happen today, most likely. I don't know if he's going to get traded to the Clippers, but James Harden will get traded today. This is a fascinating move. It might also include Dame Lillard in a 3-way trade. I've heard some rumors, so we'll see.
With Dame going to Philly?
Yes. Dame.
That'd be an upgrade for the Sixers, I would think. If I'm Embiid, I'd rather play with Dame than Harden.
Dame and Embiid really want to play with each other. They really, really wanted to play with each other. And what I've been told is it's kind of a staring contest right now of, can Dame get Embiid to Portland or can Embiid get Dame to Philly? So
there's no way the Sixers are trading Joel Embiid. I'm sorry. Maybe there is a staring contest. It's just my opinion. The Sixers would get roasted if they traded the reigning MVP.
The clock is ticking. And you have to keep in mind that Portland has the 3rd overall pick, Scoot Henderson, who a lot of people thought was the 2nd best player in this draft class behind a Hall of Fame potential guy, Victor Wembanyama. So Scoot Henderson is a major trade chip for Portland, and they can move him. Point being in all of this, you're going to see a lot of major moves be made today, both in the trade market and free agency. You're going to see Fred VanVleet, who's a champion with Toronto, take a massive payday with Houston. That's what all signs point towards, like a $35 million deal. Houston's done rebuilding. They want to speed up the rebuild. They want to put some names around these young players and see what they can do next year. So you're going to have, at least in the Nuggets situation, even though they lost to Houston that one time, which is pretty embarrassing, you're going to have some of these bottom feeder teams trying to make a big jump. And yes, maybe only some of them won 22 games, but they're going to be aiming for 40 wins. That's 20 less wins in the West that are easy to bank and easy to get. You've got a lot of teams that are trying to do some interesting things. Sacramento, who was the 3rd best team in the West last year, has a ton of cap space. That could be an interesting team. Chris Middleton, who was Milwaukee's 2nd best player for their title, he should be on the move. Phoenix has to rebuild basically their entire roster because they have 7 players signed right now. The Lakers are rumored to be in on a lot. Kyrie Irving should be on the move today, who's obviously a big name player, maybe not where he was at one point in his career. So this is going to be a very chaotic day and night and going into tomorrow afternoon of NBA transactions. And for the Nuggets, it won't be. The Nuggets have one big decision, which isn't their decision. It's Bruce Brown. And
Yep.
then if that doesn't happen, they are going to need to make another move. I mentioned the trade financial stuff, Will, real quick.
Yeah.
If they're trying to make a trade to replace Bruce Brown, it would behoove the Nuggets to know today if Bruce Brown is coming back or not, because they could do some different things in trades today that they won't be able to do tomorrow.
But who's even a trade piece? Because they're not trading any of the top 6. I mean,
they have a $9 million trade exemption that was carved out in the Monte Morris trade that essentially lets them take back $9 million of salary without giving any salary up. They could trade a couple second-round picks and that $9 million trade exception for Delon Wright with the Washington Wizards. He went to Utah. He's a guy that has a lot of the same skills as Bruce Brown. Or they could try to go after someone who's a little bit better, like Sadiq Bey or Cole Anthony with the Atlanta Hawks and then the Orlando Magic. Both of those guys would cost a little bit more. But at that scenario, you could trade Zeke Naji. You could trade a pick swap with one of your first in a couple seconds. So we're not talking about any of these core guys being traded. We're talking about they're trying to find a Bruce Brown replacement and which team around the NBA might be wanting to shed a player or shed salary to do something else.
Okay, so you have me intrigued. Let's talk about this. Who on the Nuggets roster could be trade bait? We're obviously ruling out Jokic, Porter, Murray, Gordon, Caldwell-Pope, and Christian Brown. But besides those 6, who has sort of the most upside? And we're all talking, if Bruce walks and you need to add a new piece, do you dangle a Zeke? Do you dangle a Vlatko Čančar? I don't think you dangle any of the 3 rookies you just drafted, but I don't know, if someone was in love with Julian Strawther and I could get a piece right away, maybe. I'm thinking out loud here, like, who are chip? Peyton Watson? That's another name. Could Peyton Watson be a chip you may have to dangle out there?
I think the Nuggets are higher on Peyton Watson than anybody else. So I don't see that one happening. One note on KCP, and he's not going to get traded. He is not going to get traded. He has the most tradable contract with the Nuggets right now. This mid-tier of salary that's easier to trade. So it would behoove the Nuggets to get another guy that makes between 9 and 13 million for future trades, essentially. So they don't have to put KCP in a trade in the future, because if you are going to trade for a bigger name player, you have to sometimes match these salaries together and combine them.
So you're looking ahead one off season. If you're definitely saying they're running it back with KCP. We all agree on that. But you're thinking even further down the road, once these salaries start catching up to them, really.
Exactly. In the trade deadline and then the next offseason and the following trade deadline, it would behoove them to do that, especially because KCP actually could become a free agent after next season. He does have a player option going into the following season, but that's way out. So Zeke Naji is the guy who would be traded. If the Nuggets are going to trade a guy who was on their roster last year, it's 100% going to be Zeke Naji, both because he's a young guy with potential. He's shown he can do some different things. He's kind of been in a weird situation. He's a former first-round pick, and he's got a very easy salary to trade around $4.5 million. And it also is kind of an expensive salary given where the Nuggets are and what his role might be. So he is easily the odd man out. The big thing that happened yesterday, non-trade market wise, but around the league for the Nuggets, is my number one free agent target that I talked about yesterday, Will, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I said was a restricted free agent. The Timberwolves decided not to tenure a offer sheet to him. So they decided to let him walk as an unrestricted free agent. Essentially, they didn't think he was worth $5 million. The Denver Nuggets might think he's worth $5 million. So when we're talking about replacing Bruce Brown and I bring up the name Delon Wright, or I bring up the name Sadiq Bey or Cole Anthony, there's a way easier way to do this. And that might be just signing Nickeil Alexander-Walker for a $5 million contract at 401.
All right. Well, we'll keep you posted on all things NBA. Denversports.com will have you covered tonight, tomorrow, hopefully through the holiday weekend. On a personal note, we're keeping our fingers crossed that Bruce resigns and they're done, because that would make our lives a little easier. But we'll certainly.
I got my bachelor party this weekend, Will. You're not going to find me Saturday night until Wednesday. You're not going to find me.
What time are you off the clock on Saturday, just for the record?
Probably like 7-ish, 6-ish.
Oh, PM?
Yeah, I'm picking up my brother from the airport. My bachelor party's mostly on Sunday and Monday. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, people will see Jake Shapiro articles at denversports.com then tonight, tomorrow. And then
they'll see me at the Grateful Dead concert this weekend. Let's go.
There you go. There you go. And then it's bachelor party time, well-earned PTO. Not even PTO. It's a holiday weekend for Jake. All right, though. That's a lot of basketball. So we're going to move on to football because KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy are both in the news, Jake, Broncos wide receivers. Let's start with KJ Hamler because I don't want to get it wrong here. I've got the tweets from Field Yates and Mike Kliss. The Broncos and KJ Hamler, this was this morning, agreed to a slightly tweaked final year of his rookie deal. Hamler's base salary of $1.583 million stays the same, with the chance to earn $417,000 more via incentives. Kliss says this is a salary contract adjustment that helps a player make the team because it's basically reducing or it's keeping the base salary but adding incentives. Jake, I think this was a necessary tweak because we all know it and it hurts to say out loud, but KJ's always hurt. So there's a little bit of protection on both sides now.
The Broncos had some leftover cap space, and they're using it wisely. They can hedge their bet now on KJ Hamler. If he's not going to be able to be healthy, they're going to save money. If he is healthy and he's good, they're going to spend a little bit more money. That's all this is. I don't buy the Kliss spin that this is like good for KJ. This is potentially bad for KJ, but I understand why he would want to bet on himself and potentially make more money. Those IR splits that exist in the NFL, and most people don't know this, a lot of guys have IR splits in their contract where they make significantly less if they're injured versus if they're healthy. And that kind of, I mean, it doesn't kind of suck. It does suck. That sucks. Yeah. That's something that should be negotiated out by the players union in the next collective bargaining agreement. I don't know how that could ever get in there in the first place.
All right. So with KJ, though, like we've all kind of thought he's a fringe guy to make the 53 because we know he had the surgery, the torn pec, and it just feels like there's always something going on with KJ. And then, Jake, they make it abundantly clear their thoughts on KJ when in the first round of the NFL draft, they take Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma, who plays the same exact position, has the same exact role. Does today's news change your opinion on his future coming out of camp? Because it doesn't for me. When I went to bed last night, if you had asked me, is KJ Hamler a bubble guy? I would have said, yeah. When I saw this news this morning, is KJ Hamler a bubble guy? I'm still saying, yeah. I don't think anything is solidified one way or another if KJ Hamler's on the Broncos 53-man roster come the end of August.
So we've heard the Broncos are going to run the ball. They're probably going to run a base set with 2 to 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back. Sean Payton likes to run the ball a lot. He doesn't normally use a lot of wide receivers. Sometimes they go 4 or 5 wide, but based off of what he did in New Orleans, the 5th receiver doesn't often get onto the field. KJ Hamler is receiver number 5 now for the Broncos. And
I mean, Jeudy, Sutton, Patrick, Mims, Hamler, that makes sense to me. So, yeah.
And they have 2 pass-catching tight ends. So you'd probably put Dulcich on the field in a 5-wide set before you would put Hamler. So I don't really see the role for KJ Hamler on this team anymore, particularly because he's not even a kick returner. Like, so what is KJ Hamler doing, and can you replace him for cheaper? And I think that's what the Broncos are going to try to do.
And, I mean, it becomes – you know this, it becomes a puzzle. How can I maximize my 53 roster spots? So, okay, maybe I carry 1 less wide receiver so that I can have an extra outside linebacker because, you know, Baron Browning, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, we're not sure about the health of all 3 of that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would I carry an extra wide receiver just to put him on the end of my bench when I could use that at a position of need where that guy's actually going to play? You outlined it well there. He's receiver 5, but really receiver 6 if you count Dulcich. Sean Payton, George Payton may be sitting there after the 3rd preseason game and go, guys, we got to get a spot from somewhere. KJ's got to be the one who has to go.
Right. And that's what I see too, Will. And we've known George Payton to be a guy who's maneuvered the back end of the roster pretty smartly and efficiently and effectively. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, if this is a first step in a second step move or in a 2-step move, which KJ Hamler ends up as a free agent and a last cut right before camp.
All right. Jerry Jeudy also held a camp over at Inglewood High School, spoke to the media. And Jake, it's always funny. Like Pro Football Talk has gotten like 6 stories out of this 4 minutes of Jerry Jeudy with the media. And it cracks me up because these guys do this camp. They do it for the kids. The local guys, the beat guys flock because, it's their 6 weeks off. So it's like, well, I get a chance to go talk to Jeudy. He talks for like 4 minutes and it turns into Jeudy thinks the Broncos receivers are the best. Jeudy thinks Russ is going to have a huge year. Jeudy loves Sean Payton. And it's like, okay, like, of course he's going to be Peter positive at the end of June and say he likes the wide receiver core. He's excited about Sean Payton. Russ is going to have a bounce back here. What do you make of, like, again, outlets like Pro Football Talk taking every single quote and turning it into a story? And also, like, is it shocking that Jerry Jeudy's saying positive things about his head coach, his QB, and his fellow wide receivers? I'm not particularly intrigued by any of this.
We've got the hot dog eating contest in 5 days, Will. We've got to make content. Content's got to happen. These guys got to fill up something. ESPN doesn't just go off the air because all they've got is the hot dog eating contest. They'll have Stephen A. breaking it down. So I'm not surprised. I don't blame these people. I understand the game. You understand the game. We're in the game. So whatever. These are non-stories to me. Okay, Jerry Jeudy thinks the Broncos are going to be a playoff team next year. I would hope so. I would hope that that's his goal. I would hope that he has faith in Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. If he said, nah, Russ ain't my guy, that's front page news.
That's a story. That's a huge story. If Jerry Jeudy says Russ is washed, okay, I'll drop everything.
Right. So whatever, man. Like, and this is a big season for Jerry Jeudy. He had a good second half last year. Now he's got to prove that he is a all-star, all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver this year. He finally has the quarterback that he didn't have early on in his career. He figured out a way to make it work later on into the season. But if he gets kicked out of a game he should have gotten kicked out of against Kansas City, and if Kansas City hadn't given up, are we even talking about Jerry Jeudy on the Broncos anymore, or would they have moved him this offseason?
Well, they certainly wouldn't have picked up the 5th-year option. I promise you that much. And you're right. Maybe we heard all the Cortland Sutton trade rumors, a little Jeudy, little Tim. Maybe Jeudy would have been the one to get moved. You're right. That's butterfly effect stuff. I'm a big butterfly effect guy. He makes contact with the ref, does not get kicked out, and goes on to catch 3 touchdowns, half of his season total.
Yeah, and the Broncos are in a weird spot with their receivers, Will. I think they've got a guy who's not quite a number 1. They've got a guy who might not be quite a number 2, and a third guy who's not quite a number 2. They've got like a 1.5, a 2.5, and a 2.5. And then we don't know what Mims is yet. And KJ Hamler's been up and down throughout the course of his career. So when you look at Sean Payton, he's like, let's run the ball. I look at the wide receiver room and I go, oh, that makes sense why they want to run the ball.
Yeah, no, I do too. And it's funny because one of Judy's comments was how deadly the Broncos wide receiver room is. And we're here, we live in it. So it's a lot of names we know. But I think around the NFL, the general perception is probably, that's kind of just a bunch of guys. If you put Jerry Jeudy in Cincinnati alongside Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, he'd probably be a nice piece. But as a number 1, it doesn't really add up.
They have that third guy who's good too that I can't think of off the top of my head because I'm so in basketball and baseball. So
Tyler Boyd.
So Jerry Jeudy would be the 4th receiver in Cincinnati.
He might be better than Tyler Boyd. I don't know.
He'd be duking it out for the slot position.
Yeah. All right. People can, I think we'll have something up soon on Hamler at denversports.com. People can go check it out. Let's move on to a late night at Coors Field, Jake. The Rockies get pounded 14-3 by the Dodgers. Game starts like 2 hours late. Because did you see some of the pictures of the hail on the field, by the way? That was nuts.
Yeah. I've been there for snow. I've seen Dinger and Dick Monfort have to shovel the field before. Last night, there was about 2 inches of hail on the field and covering the dugout. I'm surprised that they were able to get that game in, but that's kind of just how awesome Coors Field is that they built it knowing Colorado has extreme weather, and they built it beautifully, and they maintain it beautifully. So, yeah, weird game. I've been at Coors Field for 3-hour rain delays, 4-hour rain delays. Sadly, with the pitch clock rules, Will, I will never get to see my dream, which is a baseball game with a rain delay that goes so long into extra innings that the sun starts to rise during the game. That's not going to happen now thanks to the pitch clock rules. But last night I got a little bit of that flavor. Turned on the Rockies game. It was 11 o'clock. I was like, oh, this is awesome. You got something to watch this late at night. Can't wait for Wimbledon for that reason.
Yeah. They were up 3-2. They lost 14-3. We don't have to go big X's and O's of what happened. What happened is their pitching sucks, and the Dodgers hit the ball really far. But there was this report, and Mace wrote about it at denversports.com, that there's like 5 guys on the trade block for the Rockies. They include, C.J. Cron and Pierce Johnson and Brad Hand. Do you think Bill Schmidt and Dick Monfort will finally admit, hey, we might lose 100 games? It's about time that not only are we sellers, but we're big sellers.
What if the Rockies are buyers at the trade deadline to prevent themselves from 100 losses?
Well, they're not, but it's a good hypothetical. I mean, this was a legitimate report yesterday that they're going to listen on 5, and they already traded Moustakas.
I saw the report, and it's a lot easier to trade Mike Moustakas when you signed him 2 days before the start of the season and you're not really connected to him and he signed a minor league contract, right? Like, whatever. It's a lot harder for them to trade a guy who's been around for a couple of years in C.J. Cron, who was an all-star last year. Also, they missed the window on that.
Why is it harder? You got to elaborate on that for me, my guy.
Because
they're going to lose 100 games. They shouldn't be attached to anyone.
The Rockies are extremely loyal and attached to absolutely everybody on their roster. They are. I mean, we can debate the merits of it. I disagree with the merits of it, but I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. There's a reason why they're going to lose 100 games while having the most percentage of at-bats of guys over 30 in Major League Baseball, because they want these guys around. They love these guys. They don't trade people either.
Hold on. They traded Larry Walker. They traded Matt Holliday. They traded Troy Tulowitzki. Those are 3 way bigger names than C.J. Cron. They traded Nolan Arenado. That's 4 way bigger names.
Different situations. Those were not sell jobs. Those were trading away a star player who, in most cases, were going to get a lot of money in free agency, or who they no longer wanted to pay, or who asked for a trade. They didn't trade Trevor Story at the deadline. They didn't trade John Gray at the deadline. They didn't trade Tyler Anderson at the deadline. They have not traded guys. They didn't trade Carlos Estevez, who's a closer now, at the deadline. They don't trade guys away who are about to be free agents at the deadline. They have not sold. They just simply do not sell with this current front office. So if they actually traded some of these guys away, it would be a huge step towards admitting that they're in a rebuild, which they are, but they won't admit it, which is making things a lot worse. So do I think they're going to do it? Maybe they finally capitulate and admit they're wrong. The problem is their roster sucks. They don't have guys that are really going to accumulate a lot of value back for being part of a winning team for 2 months. There's no one that's going to absolutely tip the scales for the Los Angeles Dodgers on the Rockies roster. I was at the game on Tuesday night, and I look around the field. I'm like, I think Ryan McMahon's the only guy on the Rockies roster who would even start on the Dodgers. There's not another guy that was around that was like, he's an easy starter. So if you're going to trade C.J. Cron, who was an all-star last year, he's been hurt most of this year and not good when he's been healthy. If you're going to trade Brad Hand, who's been a reclamation project, who's been okay this year, if you're going to trade Elias Diaz, which I don't see them doing because they just gave him an extension.
He wasn't on the list.
Right, because he just got an extension because they need to keep their one WAR catcher around who was the worst player in baseball 3 different times. Like, they don't know what they're doing is what's happening at the end of the day, and they just want to run out a product of familiar guys who are nice and they think are good. Pierce Johnson getting traded isn't going to get you back much. So I'm not really going, they're going to be a major player in the trade market. But the only thing that does benefit the Rockies in this current situation is because of the amount of wildcard teams and because the Rockies are so far out of it, they are clearly not going anywhere this year. A lot of these teams that are 5-6 games out think that they can make a move at the deadline and find a way back into position. So there's not as many sellers in baseball as there used to be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, you're gonna have 20 teams that think they can make the playoffs, and they're gonna be trying to rating the 10 that won't. That obviously includes the Rockies. All right, we got about 5 minutes left in the show. There was a little hockey nugget within the last hour that I wanted to talk about. The Predators are going to buy out Matt Duchene. Any interest in a Matt Duchene back in Denver in an Avalanche sweater reunion, Jake?
100% yes. I am willing to heal the wounds to give Matt Duchene a chance to replace Gabe Landeskog for a year. And the reason why is because you can make a case that Matt Duchene is the most productive forward on the market in this free agent class right now today. Yes, Sidney Crosby might be available, and he's obviously had a better career, but Matt Duchene back to the Avs would be a huge boon to them. And yes, he's had all sorts of issues with the Avs. He asked for a trade. It was a nasty exit. I always loved Matt Duchene, and the Avs have enough leadership in that locker room that I think could overcome some of the problems that Matt Duchene brings.
No, thank you. He celebrated 30 goals when they were down 5-0, and Patrick Waugh had to say after in his press conference how freaking embarrassing Matt Duchene is to be doing that crap. And then you're right, Jake, the second Matt Duchene asked for a trade, the Avalanche got good. They went on a miracle run of the playoffs because guess what? The chemistry sucked with Matt Duchene in the locker room because he's a me first, not a we first guy. They ship that loser out of town, and Nathan MacKinnon becomes a Hart Trophy candidate. I want no part of Matt Duchene near my favorite hockey team because that dude blew his chance. And when you're Matt Duchene, when you're Carmelo Anthony, when you're Troy Tulowitzki, you're on my list, you don't get a second chance. I will be appalled if the Avalanche go anywhere near Matt Duchene.
I get it, but I think the Avs are a little bit more desperate than what we are made to believe right now.
Okay, but what do you think if Joe calls Nathan and says, what do you think about Matt? I bet Nathan hangs up on Joe. And I'm more worried about pleasing Nathan MacKinnon than I am about adding a second-line winger who is just a guy at this point in his career.
I'm with you in the sense that if you're going to sign Matt Duchene, you need to call Mac, you need to call Cale, you need to call Jared and say, are you on board with this? And if any of them say no, you can't move forward. I don't think Duchene should be their number one target, but he is a guy that very easily solves their second line forward issue.
All right. Well, very easily if he had never done what he did. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there who, you know, would be great talents, but they did what they did. So you can't ignore that too.
I was one of the very few people that thought Carmelo, and I am twice the Carmelo hater that I think you are. I am like the biggest Carmelo hater. I even wanted Carmelo back on a vet minimum deal last year if the Nuggets could have worked it out with an open roster spot. I thought that would have been a fun little wrinkle in the Nuggets title run, and I knew the Nuggets were winning a title the entire time, and I don't think Melo would have affected that in any sort of significant way. I think he would have been a guy like Ish Smith or Jeff Green, so that would have been fun. It's fine. The worst trade in Denver sports history is Nolan Arenado. What I would give to get Nolan Arenado back right now is just immense, and you might have him on your it list, but for me, that was a Rockies mess up. That was not a player that completely just wanted out. He said me or the GM, and they chose the GM. Like, come on, man. How can you choose the GM who quit his job 2 months later anyway? So these are all sorts of like Denver sports what ifs. Duchene to me is as bad as anyone, has had as ugly as an exit as anyone. But to me, I grew up watching Matt Duchene play, and he grew up an Avs fan, and we know the story, and it would be nice to put a little bow on it and have a healthy ending on it. At least that's where I'm at, and I understand you're not in the same place because you're a little bit more impassioned about the Avs than I am, and I get it because I feel the same way about Carmelo Anthony with my
I'm impassioned about the Nuggets too, and I can tell you Melo would have derailed a title run, so I'm very, very glad they did not sign Carmelo. I disagree with you on that. I think Melo would have been a why am I not playing guy. He would have been a Bones Highland level distraction, and they would have had to move on from him, much like they did Bones. I don't think Melo announced his retirement during the Western Conference Finals to try to take away the attention. Melo's selfish his whole life, and Melo's still selfish.
Yeah, he's really selfish, and he knew what he was doing when he announced his retirement that day. He knew.
All right. 30 seconds or less. Let's close on a cheery note. give us the bachelor party rundown.
Sunday, I'm going to the Rockies game. Yes, I am the problem, James Marilat, with like 20 friends. So,
oh my gosh, your tab's going to be like $500.
Dick loves me. Dick's going to love me on Sunday. And we're seeing the Detroit Tigers play. Like Spencer Torkelson or something is going to pitch. Like, I don't even know who's on that team. I think Harmon, maybe I'll see the last game I've ever seen of Miguel Cabrera in the big leagues. That'll be fun. Then we're having a little dinner. We'll probably go out on the town. Monday, we're going karting at like Unser Racing or something like that, like hardcore, like racing karting with a couple of my buddies. And then I'm going to the Dead Show Monday night in Boulder, their last show ever at Folsom Field. I'm not the biggest Deadhead. I love the Dead. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to associate myself completely with that crowd, but I love good music. I obviously love Boulder, Colorado, and Folsom Field. And there's never been a bad thing that's ever happened at Folsom Field. And don't remind me of the bad things that have happened at Folsom Field. So that will be a really nice time. And my brother's my best man. And I haven't seen my brother in like a year. So it'll be really nice to have him here.
Great, Jake. Well, you've earned it. Enjoy it. Have fun. That sounds like a great bachelor party. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. Coffee Break's going to take some time off next week, obviously, with the holiday. But Rachel will be back with you later in the week. In the meantime, stay tuned to denversports.com for the latest on the Nuggets and the Avs. He's Jake. I'm Will. Catch you next week.